Networking. The word alone makes some of us want to hide in the bathroom at the next conference. Welcome to The Scene Live, the show where we dig into what it really takes to build a business you're proud of and be seen for the work that you do. I'm your host, Kim Speed, a brand clarity coach, founder of Purple Moon Creative, and every week I sit down with an entrepreneur who has something real to share. Not just the highlight reel, but the actual lessons from building something from the ground up. And today is no exception. My guest has spent decades figuring out what makes people actually want to connect with each other instead of dreading it. He's an author, a speaker, and someone who has turned networking from a chore into something that feels human again. Keith Budden is author, speaker, and lifelong networker who helps people build strong, more natural relationships in business and in everyday life. His book, From Awkward to Connected, explores how to move beyond uncomfortable small talk and build genuine confidence and create meaningful connections without pretending to be someone you're not. Drawing on decades of experience in business, networking, and public life, Keith brings a practical, honest, and often very funny perspective to something most of us find genuinely hard. So before we get into it, please, if you find this useful, please hit subscribe and follow along. We do this every week. So help me to welcome our guest today. Keith, welcome to The Scene Live. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Kim. No, it's a pleasure to be here, and great to be part of your show.
Well, I'm super excited to have this conversation because it is one of those things that I truly believe is so important for small business owners is to learn about networking, and you do it really well. But for those who don't know you, Keith, let's start with your story. Can you take us back to not the beginning, but not too long ago, you had a business and you've transitioned from your business into doing some new things. So how did your journey into networking and relationship building start? What led you into doing this?
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll split that into two, if you like, because networking is something I've been doing for about 20 years now, in different ways. From all sorts, from real formal networking in like BNI to actual fun networking as well. Not the BNI networking is not fun, because that would be an unreal. But yeah, I ran my own consultancy doing GDPR and doing data protection, and was very, very successful at that until about this time last year, actually just a little bit later than this time last year, when suddenly out of the blue I had a massive heart attack, which really knocked me for six. And my surgeon at the hospital was fantastic. But he also taught me a real life lesson in that he said, basically, if you don't cut the stress out of your life, you're not going to see next Christmas.
Wow.
And basically, we've managed to sort you out this time, but next time you might not be so lucky.
Oh my gosh.
And I
You
was
know
like,
what?
I was like, I really don't want it to be a next time.
No. And I knew that you had that episode, but I didn't know the depth of it. So I'm so glad that you made some changes.
And so, so I realized that things had to change. So I sold that business for a fraction of what it was worth, but I essentially wanted out, and I was very lucky, I think, in that I found someone to buy it who accepted my terms, which was basically, I'll spend 48 hours with you to teach you where everything is, and then I'm gone. It was very much.
Wow.
But then I went through a little bit of a grieving process, because I think most of us who've got our own business, we don't realize how much it means to us until it's not there.
Yes.
And although, money compensates for it a bit, it's still not there. And so I thought, what am I going to do? And actually my daughter said to me, well, she said, Keith, Dad, you always said you were going to write your life story and you never have. So, but you've got time now. So why don't you write your life story? So I did. So I wrote my life story, a book called A Lifetime of Moments, which is not a traditional autobiography at all. It's not sort of, you know, this is when I was at school and this is when it's
Yeah.
themed. It's more into things like this is a bit on love, this is a bit on family, this is a bit on faith, this is a bit on business, this is a bit on work. And in fact, one of the reviewers of that book, or one of the readers of the book, left me the best review I could have wished for, really, because they said, move over, Forrest Gump, this is a new box of chocolates, which I was like,
Wow.
Okay, I'll take that, thank you very much. So that got me into writing.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody about it, and I said, you know, I felt then that I'd like discovered this talent that I never knew I had. And what they actually said to me was interesting. And again, I think it's part where we all learn a bit as we go through life. They said, no, you've always had that talent, but you never gave it room to breathe. Whereas now you've actually given it room to breathe, so it's able to be there. You know, you didn't suddenly overnight become a decent author. You've probably always been a decent author, but you've never really pushed that side of things because other things have got in the way.
Right.
And then from there, I got thinking about what I could then do another book about. And I did write, in between that, I did write a short novel called Chain Gang.
And that was very, very unique and interesting too.
Yeah. So I did that, and so that's there too. But then I sort of what have I really done that other people might really want to learn about, and B, that I know enough about to write about, which was networking.
Yeah.
And because I think a lot of people go into networking almost the wrong way around. People go into networking when they're desperate for sales. And in fact, that's
Yes.
not the right time to do networking. You should be networking long before you're desperate for sales. Because hopefully, if you don't do networking right, then you don't get desperate for sales, as the sales
Right.
become part of what they do. But I actually heard a really good explanation the other day, which I thought, yeah, that's actually fits really well with my mindset, which is there's a lot of people who say, you go in, I think a lot of people know, you go into the room and you shouldn't sell to the room, you should sell through the room. But I actually don't quite get that. I think, yes, you don't go and sell to the room, because there's like to be very few people in any networking room who actually want to buy what you want to buy, what you've got to sell. It happens sometimes, but it's unusual. But I don't think you should be looking at those people as being your sales force, because that's not what they're there for. You should be looking at those people to be your marketing team, because that is what they're there for.
Yes.
And the difference I mean by that is because you shouldn't be looking at those people to close the sale for you. That's not what they're going to do.
Yes, you're right.
But they should be, in effect, your marketing team. They should be marketing your business for you. And I think where a lot of people there have difficulty is, we all make a big thing of our 60 seconds, different networking does it different ways, but almost everybody has the 60 seconds in some form. Don't make that 60 seconds about necessarily how to sell your business. Make it about education, that the people in the room know enough about your business that they can sell you. Because then because then it's for you to actually still do the bit of if I know somebody who wants something about branding, then I know I can refer them to you, because I know that's what you do.
Right.
I don't know how you do it. I don't need to know how you do it. That's your bit.
Yeah. And of course, I'd have a conversation with somebody. I wouldn't
absolutely
expect them to just pay online and let's go.
And so I think that's a bit that people get wrong. And I think the other thing that people get wrong with networking generally is that I think people don't realize that it typically, I mean, again, there's exceptions to every rule, but typically it's a slow burn. Yeah,
Yes.
you know, it's not unusual to find people who are networking for 6 months, maybe even 12 months before they even get a lead from their networking. And you then get people who 3 months in go, it's not working.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a waste of money. It's not working. I'm not doing that. And the other thing that really gets me there, by the way, is the people who aren't consistent. You know,
Right.
the people who turn up once in a blue moon, and then and at the end of the year, they'll be the very people who complain it doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a single bit of business from it. It doesn't work. Well, yeah, how many times have you been? Well, 5 times. Well, you know, maybe that might be why it's not working.
And with the same people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have to say is that Keith and I know each other because we attend a similar networking event that we go to on a regular basis. And I have to say, Keith, you know, I didn't even think about it before, but we talk about BNI as, you know, that's where a lot of us, especially, you know, people that have been in the business for a while. And that was one of the first networking experiences I had. Whether you love it or hate it, one of the things that it made you do was be consistent.
Yeah.
It made you accountable. Like you had to come, because if you didn't, somebody else would move into your seat. So there was some, you know, like I said, love it or hate it. It trained me to be consistent and show up regularly. And you're right. I didn't necessarily go in and each week find that I got a piece of business. It was funny. If you trace it back, it's such a windy road that, you know, maybe started in that room, but ended up some obscure place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as well, one of the other things which I put over in my book, From Awkward to Connected, is a lesson again, which took me a long time to learn, but it's such a change when you master it. Is a lot of people go into networking room and aiming to be, you know, I want to be the noisiest, loudest person in the room. I want to be the center of attention. I want to be the most interesting person in the room. Actually, the person who does the best business is not the most interesting person in the room. They're the most interested person in the room.
Oh, let's say that again, please.
So the person doing the most business is not the most interesting person in the room. They're the most interested person
Yes,
in the room.
that is such a good point. Oh my gosh. I know what you mean. Please let people understand that better.
Yeah, what I mean is, you know, you go into the people I find to do really well with networking are people who go into the room, and whether it's a real room or a virtual room, and who listen, and particularly in one-to-ones, and particularly in real life one-to-ones, but it's true in online one-to-ones too. People doing what I call active listening, and by that what I mean is, to me, there's two sorts of listeners. You get the active listener, who is actually listening to what you're saying, and they're taking it in, and they're thinking about questions, and they're thinking about learning about what you're doing, as against your passive listener, who actually is only waiting for you to take a breath and they can give their pitch.
And they're not listening because they're thinking about what they're going to say about themselves, right? Yes. Yes.
And you know, and I think that I mean, I'll admit, I'm sure we've all been there. We've all been that person at some time.
Well, and
But
it comes from nervousness too. I remember starting off thinking the only thing I could think of was, instead of listening to the person, was, what the heck am I going to say that sounds, you know,
yeah,
half decent here? But yeah, you're so right. We get so much more out of it if we actually understand and listen to the person that's talking to us.
Yeah, yeah, and I think part of that as well is whilst making sure that your message is consistent, because that's how people learn and people remember what you do. I think as well, though, it's about don't always just have the same 60 seconds that you give every week verbatim, because I mean, I in a different networking group that I belong to, there's one chap, and bless him, he's a lovely guy. He really is a lovely, lovely guy, and he's got a great little business. But I've been going to that networking group for 10 years now, I think. Must be close on 10 years. And every week his 60 seconds is exactly the same. And what that means is as soon as he starts it, I switch off because my brain's saying, no, I've got 58 seconds to have a rest now then, because I know what he's going to say, so I haven't got to listen. And I'm sure one day he'll surprise me by saying something different. But yeah, it's getting that mix right between not being so different every week that people are like, I don't know what you do, because every week it's something different.
Right.
But at the same time, don't be that, as I say, every week for 10 years, it's exactly the same 60 seconds, because 9 out of 10 people, I'm sure, in that room are the same as me. They switch off during his 60 seconds.
Sure.
Well, I know what he's saying, so I'll turn the volume down on that one, and I'll
Oh, that's so true. Oh my gosh. I can picture that person as well. I know that person from my own groups, like, not obviously the same person, but yeah, you can almost say it for them.
Yeah.
You can almost say it for them. And I think what you're saying too is don't come in with like, a completely different topic each week. Stay on topic, but say different things about the topic.
Yeah. Or again, different people do different things, but sometimes it can be what you've done to help somebody that week or whatever, which then people think, oh, actually, you know what? I'll do that. But I think that then leads into the second part of things, which is, again, that people don't realize people go to networking, and the people typically say it doesn't work are, again, the people go to their weekly meeting or their monthly meeting, whatever it is, and they might even go religiously to that, but they don't do anything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that doesn't work either, because it's in the one-to-ones. Whether that's a one-to-one over a coffee in real life, whether it's a one-to-one over Zoom or Teams or whatever in the virtual life, it's those one-to-ones where you learn more about each other, and actually then that's where you start to form the real relationships, and it's from those relationships then that business flows. And I mean, I if I think of one guy I know in a different networking group I belong to, who he and I think we had 3 one-to-ones before we had a one-to-one where we spoke about business at all.
Yeah.
We just we just learned about each other's lives. But I actually the other day, actually 2 days ago now, was on LinkedIn, and I was reading somebody's article on LinkedIn, and I was like, Jim could help that person. And so I instantly put him in touch with them.
Fantastic.
And he actually came back to me and said, we haven't spoken for 12 months, but, but I was still in your mind enough. And I was like, because Jim, I was reading what they wanted, and I was like, Jim's the person for them.
Yeah.
And I think, I think as well, if you do networking well, it's not always also about just what you get from it in terms of business. So of course that's why, it's why we all do it. None of us are altruistic enough, but we just go every week because
it's entertainment.
But at the same time, often, I'm a firm believer that what goes around comes around, and what by me doing that, maybe then next week he sees somebody and he thinks, oh, they want a speaker. I know a speaker. He's a great speaker. I'll put them in touch with him.
Yeah.
And I think it works, but I think as well the other bit again where it's an education thing, and I think a lot of us are not that good at, is if someone gives us makes an introduction for us, and it's actually not a good introduction, don't be afraid to go back to the person who made the introduction and say, hey, I think we ought to have another one-to-one, because you know what, you introduced me to that person, and in fact, they're not really what I do.
That's a great point, and something I never considered. Because you're right. Sometimes we get, these random referrals or connections, and I've had them too, but I haven't gone back and said why. But that would be so helpful, like for both parties.
Yeah, because otherwise there's always a danger you're going to get another one of that person, because they're like, well, I gave that to Kim, and that must have been all right, because she came back and said thanks for the introduction or whatever.
Yeah.
So and in fact, you might be sitting there thinking, God, I spent half an hour talking to that person, and they're not the right fit for me.
I just wasted my time. Well, and that takes me to another point. You make the point that networking isn't just something to do at business events. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think enough people think of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think everywhere you go, I think, is an opportunity for networking, and whether that might be a social occasion, whether it might be might be that you're at an exhibition. And again, people don't think about exhibitions in terms of networking, generally. But
Right.
again, I mean, again, this is something that a trick I learned years and years ago. Is to, if you want to attract people to you at an exhibition or a conference or whatever, is I've got I haven't got it on tonight, but I've got a Hawaiian shirt that I wear just for this purpose. And I'll sit in a seminar session, and I'll make sure that my hands are one of the first to go up to ask a question. And I'll never be rude. I'll always ask a relevant question, and I actually want to ask a question which I think the speaker is going to be able to answer well, because I want that to, I'm not after trying to steal the limelight away from the speaker. I want to show the speaker in a good light, because I know what it's like to be on that side of the stage and have people throw a question at you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to ask a question that makes people think. Because then what I found is that when you're outside having a coffee or whatever, that people would come and find that guy with the Hawaiian shirt who asked that interesting question. And why do I wear the Hawaiian shirt? Because I want to make it easy for those people to find me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's wonderful.
They have not think what did that person look like. Just that was the guy in the big bright yellow and orange shirt. And there he is. And don't ask him a question, and it's amazing the number of conversations that I've had that way. So I think that's fun.
You know what's funny? It makes me think. Seth Godin, another author that talks about marketing, and his signature is always like interesting glasses.
Yeah,
and I always like, you would never not know who he is, but. There's a lot of people that are bald and same sort of build, but he puts on those glasses, and you remember him.
It is. It's those sort of things, and the same is true as well. I say at none of business social events. Again, it's just always. I like to think that I've always got my eyes and ears opening to what people are saying, not necessarily for business for me, but is someone saying something that I'm thinking, oh, actually, Kim could help them, or I know somebody who could help them.
Yeah.
Because again, it's those little bits of investment, I want to say, really, investment in time that makes people think, you know what, that person is important. Not important, but it is a person I want to keep in my circle, because that person signposts people to things. And a lot of the time I find that a lot of time I may not know the answer to something, but because of the network that I've built up, most things I know someone I can signpost somebody to.
Yeah.
And that then adds to your value, because you become the guy that's worth knowing, because I know that if I've got a problem, I can go and talk to him, and he'll know somebody who can refer you to.
Yeah. And I have to tell you just a quick little joke, because my family makes fun of me because they always say, "Oh, she's the one. She knows a guy. She knows a guy." Because I always can think of somebody who, can solve a problem for somebody. But it's true. It's because I listen and I put it in my mental Rolodex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is so important, yeah. And I think it's something as well we don't. And I'm going to say the other way around that as well is when people do give you a good referral, again, and I think it's something that sometimes people aren't that good at, is making sure you go back and thank that person for that good referral. Because again, I've had people where I know I've referred somebody and I've got no idea whether they actually done a good piece of business or not, because no one mentions it again. And again, I think that's something where, again, going back to BNI, I think one of the things that BNI does well there as well is this thing of people saying thank you for referrals and things,
Yes.
which I think other networking groups tend not to do the same way that BNI does. Now, that's not to say everything's great about BNI, because it isn't. I've
Well, you kind of get outgrown of it,
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't poo-poo it, because I literally started there and it helped me grow my business, but it does, sometimes get tiring.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think I think as well that certainly, and I'm sure that my BNI group was not the only BNI group where this happened,
Yeah.
where we were an early morning breakfast group, and we'd sometimes you'd meet someone in the car park and you'd swap a referral
Those
in the
little
car park.
pieces of paper.
In the car park, so that you didn't have to stand there saying, "How many referrals you had this week?" "I haven't had any." "No, I've had one. I had one from Paul, and it was great."
Yeah.
He only actually gave it to me 5 minutes ago outside of the car park. Yeah, we'll skip that bit.
Yeah.
And but I think, yeah, it's I would never not be, and I think it's I know people who've built their whole business off BNI. It works really, really well for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But equally, I know other people it doesn't work for at all. And I think it is a mindset thing. I think it's got its quirks, as all networking groups have, but it's got its quirks. I mean, I went to one recently. I couldn't believe now that they seem to have this thing of almost like silk badges that seem to get different bits grown on the end of them and on the end of them. And I'm like, what the hell's all that about? It
Really?
reminded me a bit like when you were in the Scouts and you used to get a badge to like throw on you.
Sell them on your uniform. Yeah.
But yeah, it's to me, I think networking is really, really important, and I think it's almost something as well, which I was actually talking to somebody about this. This isn't in my book because this was only a few weeks ago. I was actually talking to somebody from the local Chamber of Commerce, and they were actually saying, isn't it a shame that we don't get taught how to network when we're at school?
That's
And
a really good point.
And I thought, yeah, actually, that's got some real merit to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm a massive advocate of networking. I think it's one of the best methods of marketing that you can have.
Well, and I think it's really interesting, Keith, that, there's a lot of people that can do so well with networking, and it's really important for small businesses. But you just made me think it's also like, we should be teaching people in school how to do this, because even in if you're working for somebody, there's times where you still have to, do the mix and mingle, and you have to have conversation, and you have to learn what other people do, even within your company. And there's so many people that don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And I think as well, some of that is fear. Some of it is, people thinking, oh, I'm going to screw this up. So, I mean, I make a thing of it in my book. We've all been there. I can remember, my first networking meeting, touching a cup of tepid coffee that, probably had been paint strip in a previous life. And thinking, what am I going to do? And then someone comes up. Hopefully, someone comes up and talks to you. And then once that's there, then you start making the conversation.
Yeah.
But one of the things which, again, I got taught, and very early in my days of networking, when physical in the room networking, was the importance of how people place their feet. Because if you've got feet all just pointing in at each other, that makes it very difficult for other people to intrude in that conversation. Whereas if you're standing more openly than that, then people
then people feel welcome.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. And this is a great tip, and you've given us some. But in your book, what is some of the things that people could expect to be learning from what you're talking about in there?
I mean, I think some of the things we've already spoken about. Some of the things like never be afraid of no. We all get, even me now, we all get imposter syndrome. Sometimes we go into a room and we think we don't belong in this room. This room is not for us.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, though, is people realizing that there are all these different networking groups, because different groups work for different people. And I'm not saying you should go to the networking group once, and if it doesn't feel right for you, you shouldn't go again, because it takes a little while to get into the room.
Yeah.
But if you've been there for 3 or 4 months and it's still feeling that way, that room is probably not the room for you. That's probably not the place to be. And so actually probably don't waste your time going to that anymore, because for whatever reason it is not going to work for you. Because there's a difference between a room which is tricky and a room that's open and chatty. And I mean, one of the things that I for a while, I belonged to a group where we used to go on a Friday, we'd go for lunch at a restaurant. It was really nice.
Yeah.
But then I realized after a few months that actually I was always sitting on the same table with the same 5 people. And so, I reached the point thinking, well, I know all you 5 businesses.
Yeah.
I want to know actually what's going on that table over there.
Yes.
But the opportunity just never arose, because you just almost got like, oh, yeah, you sit there and you sit there and you sit there. And so again, it's always a problem with that sort of networking. I think that it can get into a situation where you're just mixing with the same 4 or 5 people all the time, which can be great.
It's like, even in your family where you always sit in the same seat at the table, you got to pull yourself away from that comfort zone. And what, that brings up another thing that I always remember is going to an event where, say, hardly anybody. We've all been to those, and you think, oh, how brave I am to get here. And then you have a conversation with somebody. You have to remember to not stay with that one person because it's safe. Like, you need to move around.
Yeah.
Or if you're having trouble getting out of a conversation, figuring, how do you get out of that kind of conversation, Keith? Do you have any tips on that?
Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it has to be the manufactured trip to the loo. It has to be like, so it's been great talking to you, but I really need a wee. So and I mean, I've done that before now to get out of a conversation.
That's a good one.
But equally, don't be that person, because again, I've experienced that from both sides. Don't be that person who this is where we're talking back to the active listening again, where you're talking, and in fact you're aware the other person isn't, well, they may be listening to you, but in fact their eyes are looking over your shoulder to see who the next most interesting person is they can go and talk to.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's, I mean, yeah, we've all done it, we've all been there, but it is that thing. And sometimes it is just saying, well, it's been lovely sort of talking to you.
Yeah.
Let's swap cards, or if it's in the room, let's swap cards, and let's get in touch.
Yes.
But again, again, I always think as well is, I don't know whether I assume I'm not alone in this, but I always make sure that if I take somebody's card, I will scribble a little note on the back of it as to what it was we spoke about or whatever, so that when I follow up with them, just follow ups where the fortunes in the follow up, as they say.
Yes.
But when I follow up, I remember what it was we spoke about, or what.
That's such a good point.
Otherwise, I mean, we've all done that, I'm sure. You get back with 20 business cards, and you look at one and you think, what did I even?
Who is this?
Yeah, did I even speak to them? What did I speak to them about?
Yeah.
And incidentally, there I learned a lesson there myself with business cards. Many moons ago, I had these business cards printed, and I don't ask me why, I can't remember why, but I went for black glossy cards with silver writing on, because I thought they looked like the dogs.
Sure.
They were. And I always remember that I took them along to this networking, and we're chatting away, and I gave one to this guy, and he looked at the card and he went, well, that's no good, is it? And I was like, what's he mean? Yeah, I'm really proud of this card. What does he mean?
This is a sharp card.
And he said, I was going to write a bit about you on the back, and I can't, can I? Because it's black and shiny. So how do I write on that?
That was a good learning moment.
And it was one of those moments, when somebody can suddenly make you feel like 6 inches tall. It was like sort of.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I remember getting back into the office and thinking, right, okay, those are cards in the bin, and
all those ones.
And eventually wondering, nice white, plain backs so people can write.
Unless you can go out and buy some sort of fancy pen that can write on.
That's right, yeah.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
yeah,
these are such great tips.
And I mean, things change now, of course, because now you get to see about people put information instead by scanning a QR code on your phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's great, and it works, but never. I still think the good old traditional business card still has its place.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Oh, these were excellent tips. But I also want to, I know that there's lots of things that you do. I know you're really good at networking. You have the book From Awkward to Connected, but I know there's some other things that you're working on. I think that I heard a little bird tell me that you're already started on your next book. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what else you're doing. And because I know that besides writing, you're also doing some other things. So your world has expanded ever since you sold your business.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I just, in terms of expansion, I mean, probably the first thing is to say the 2 podcasts that I now do, not like yours here where I have interviews, but I've got 2 podcasts that I do. One's a daily one. It's less than 5 minutes every day. It's called Lighter Than You Started. And it's just positive affirmations every day, positive thoughts every day. And it's basically, I started that because I started just after Christmas, because I was sitting at Christmas thinking, do you know what? If we want bad news these days, we've all got, or negativity, we can all get that 24/7 365 on umpteen
Yeah,
cable stations.
turn the radio, the TV on, open
Yeah.
your computer.
And it's a negative. And if we want that, we can all get that. But it's not so easy to get the positive stuff. And so I thought, okay, let's try this. Let's just start this little podcast. And as I say, it's 5 minutes a day, and it is just positive thoughts about different things. Sometimes to do with big business, something to do with life, something just to do with nothing in particular, but just positive thoughts. And I've been really, really pleased with the reception that's got, and it's now something like just under 2,000 subscribers to that podcast, which is brilliant.
That's wonderful.
And it's, for some reason, and don't ask me why, because it certainly wasn't a market I set out to get.
Yeah.
It's been incredibly popular in Japan.
Really?
But it's also, what has been interesting is, since the troubles have been happening in the Middle East,
Oh, yes.
there's also been an increased number of listeners in the Middle East. And again, I think it's probably people just wanting that bit of positivity rather than everything that's happening around them.
Well, that makes complete sense.
So yeah, so that's one that I do. Let's say lighter than you started. And then I've got another one connected with networking that I do called Networking Nuggets, and that goes out every Wednesday. And again, it's only about 10-15 minutes. It's a short podcast, but it's points like we've been talking about today. But different points that people think about. So again, yeah, if anyone wants to subscribe to that, then iTunes or anywhere, Spotify, anywhere you normally get your podcasts, then Networking Nuggets is there.
I love that.
And then, yeah, I've started writing my next book, which is actually called Writing Myself Back Together, which is really all to do with the journey of, my business going, and then me finding something to do, and then me finding the therapeutic values, to me anyway, that I've gained just from writing. But since I've started writing that book, it's actually expanded a bit to actually say, although for me this journey was about writing, it doesn't have to be about writing. So if you're not a writer, hopefully you'll still get something out of the journey, because the journey is really about giving yourself more space to breathe. And that, I think that's what I've discovered now, is that my life now has that space in it, which it didn't have before. And I mean, my daughter, actually, bless her, she actually said to me a few months ago now, "Dad, you're just such a much nicer person to be around."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, that really,
that stings a bit.
Yeah. it sort of stung in a way. I mean, she didn't mean it in a stingy way. She meant it in a really nice way. But it was like, you mean I wasn't that nice a person to be around? But I know what she means. Yeah. Because I don't have, and I think it's like, I was saying to somebody about, I was talking to somebody not so long ago about the stress, and they said, when you had your business, then did you feel you were stressed? And I said, no, I didn't, to be honest. To me, that was just business. It was just, it was.
Yeah, that's how life was.
I said, but almost like, I likened it to, I said, it's a bit like when you put your automobile into the garage to have it serviced, and they fix the brakes, and you didn't realize how bad the brakes were until you come off the forecourt and you hit the brake and you destroy yourself through the windshield.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it's like that. Now looking back, I think, how did that? Crikey, I was stressed. But at the time, if you said to me, was I stressed? I'd be like, nah, it's just business. And I think it's because, again, you all of us, we get into that thing where, because that's our norm, because it's just there, we don't recognize that.
Yes.
And it's only when you remove it that suddenly it's like, oh, actually, that doctor had a point. And yeah, it's now I know it's not that easy for everybody. You know, I'm fortunate that I guess I found something else to fall into, and B, you know, I'm sufficiently far through life that I've got pretty well everything I need. So I haven't got big things to go out and buy any
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a young family to support, and that. So in that sense,
It's different stage of life. Yeah.
But I think it did make me realize that probably for too many people, they don't make that space. And at the end of the day, you know, for all of us with our lives, this is not a dress rehearsal. You know, this is it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and again, this is something I said something not so long ago. I said, you know, I'm pretty certain that having laid in that bed really for 24 hours or so, not knowing what the future held, I do know that not a single moment I was laying there did I think I wish I'd spent more time in the office. and you know, I think that's the
Yes.
You know, again, if it's a lesson to learn, it's that.
Yeah, that's a great point to end this with, because it's so true. Life is precious and it's limited. Our time is limited, and we need to remember to smell the roses, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Keith, this has been fabulous. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think this is great value for entrepreneurs and small business owners that really need to hear this, that sometimes people need a nudge, that how important networking is. So whether you're doing it in person or online, or like myself, I like to do a little of both. It's how I built my business. I really recommend it. So I recommend that if you are struggling with it, get Keith's book, From Awkward to Connected. And you can get that on Amazon. I believe that it is in Kindle form, so you can get it anywhere. But it's hard copy too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there will be also a Audible version of the book in the autumn. So
Oh, that's exciting too. And also, I wanted to make sure that your website is up here, because if you go to Keith's website, you'll see some of the other things that he's done, some of the other books he's written, and then the upcoming book that's
absolutely,
that we can expect. And hear about some of the other things that you're doing that we didn't even talk about, like you're getting into voiceover, you're doing podcasts. There's so much. I feel like your life is so rich now.
Yeah.
Now that you're doing all of this, and it sounds like you're really enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Loving it.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Keith. I really, really appreciate you coming and sharing all of this information, these great tips. And if you want to get in touch with Keith, he's also on LinkedIn, but you can get all of his information from his website, which is up here at keithbudden.co.uk. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Keith. And we'll see you next time on The Scene Live. Bye for now, everyone.